Hello everyone, and welcome back to another GDTheories video. I'm not gonna lie, this script has been a while in the making. It's taken me around a couple weeks to get it down, and even more to try to figure out what the level was going on, because this level is a really hard one to figure out. Whenever I started writing the script the first couple of weeks, I've been like trying to think about it, see where I wanted to go, and I've had to actually take the script several times in several different directions just to get a feel that I wanted to. But now, I think I have finally got it down. So, let's get into it. To start off, I often do a level analysis and then go into the story, and so I plan on doing the same here, because this is more, I feel like, focused on the level and the actual story. So if you want to skip right into the story and theorizing, if you feel like you already have a grasp of the level, then skip to this timestamp below. The first section of this level is, I would say, is reminiscence of a child's memory, with like these little planets floating everywhere, soft lights, and things that maybe look like neurons or like just leave some type of little floating ball things just floating around in the background. It just gives me the vibe of something like that a child would think of. These little neuron ball thingies also seem to make a reappearance throughout the level, and their presence suggests that perhaps this is a memory, like the level trying to say that's someone looking back on their past at a more innocent time that has since gone by. The next three sections seem to take on this kind of futuristic city theme, and seem to simply just reflect what the person is going through right now. Like this darker section, then it either wakes up or the world wakes up, maybe this guy gets up early, I don't know, then transitions into sunrise, and then sunset, it skips the middle part of the day. But I mean, whether this is a representation of his day-to-day routine, or just a trip the person is taking just to reminisce, maybe some sort of vacation, is unknown. A lot about the story protagonist is also left up for debate and interpretation, so is most of the story actually, so I'm just gonna have to take some liberties with it. One quick note would be that the theory that this is some sort of trip makes sense just because of the rapidly changing environments, as one could argue whether or not the first part is some type of airport or something, because there's like a reference to some sort of ship, or whether it's just this guy traveling, because I mean it's the future, I don't know, everything makes sense there. But there's also potentially another explanation which I will go into later. Now the next section is interesting. After the three cities, right at the very end of the third one, it looks more like a city you'd see today, not gonna lie. The words "is this an illusion" flash on the screen, then followed by a massive explosion of white, which then takes the player to what I think is personally one of the coolest sections of the level. This part looks like a destroyed area of outer space with some form or type of star in the middle, with scraps of junk and satellites just floating around. One cool feature also of this part is that the color of the glow in the background changes depending on the player's color, which is a really cool touch. At the end of the section, the player is shown to question what if everything I knew was a lie, and then is taken to an interesting area which looks like the star exploded, followed by a fast ship section with this really fast robot section, which looks like the remnants of the star there as well. It seems like reality is being destroyed, those weird ball things from the beginning are shattering. And also in the robot section you can see a car or like a house, some parts of like a light post. It's really weird. Another thing of note would be that some weird things seem to shoot out of those little balls like rockets, or like if the balls themselves are just exploding with some sort of force releasing something. The next section really has nothing of note, at least in terms of story or lore at the very least, but it does look really amazing, with the past that you have to be revealed as you go along, with some more of those breaking orb or neuron thingies, I don't know, in the background. It just doesn't have that much story-wise, it just looks cool. Now the section after this is one of the more interesting ones. It seems to reflect not modern times, but it seems like it could come from around the modern area. It's followed by, for one, something that looks like a city, then a park, a restaurant, a small section with flowers, and then finally an area with skyscrapers and what looks like half-constructed big buildings living in the background. One cool thing of note would be the signs in this section partially being in Korean. Their translations are quite interesting, but however, I haven't really gotten a decent one. I managed to get a rough from the first sign, which means that. The second one meaning infinite luck. I'm not really sure if that makes sense. And the last one, the third sign, there's the Korean, and it supposedly translates to karaoke. This is perhaps the only sign that makes actual sense. And then after this, there's one final section, which I would say has the most lore behind it, and it's really the only way you can really pick out a story from this. I mean, you could get maybe a general message from this level, but not really that much else without this final section. It's really cool, like these little these little lights flashing on what looks like kind of puppets or figures recreating memories, with some text that first read, "For you who's hesitant to change, or for those who's about to face one, it might be too scary to look at. But it's because you're so wary of novelty that you made such horrific illusions. The veil of fear that covers the truth, when you take it off with your hands, you'll see the world truly prepared for you." There's also a translation, there's also the original Korean in the background. This is just an English translation. And in the background, a person recalls their life, or at least some events of it. With all those descriptions out of the way, it's finally time for the theorizing. First off, let's go back to that end part and analyze it further. The first image is a boy and his father, and the second just seems to be just a fond memory he has with his father growing up. I actually suppose it couldn't be a father, just a parental figure. I'm just going to assume it's a father. And the third is showing the father comforting the boy, something the boy also appears to be a little older. The fourth image shows the boy now much older, but not too much older, perhaps being a young adult or something, mourning his father's death, or then either in the mourning process or moving out. I can't really figure this one out yet. It's quite hard to say with absolute certainty for this one slide. Next, the boy seems to view some sort of note or like some object or crumpled up piece of paper that the father left behind for him. And then one final image with the boy standing next to some sort of pedestal or candle or something related to the father, before one shows one more final of the glow frames with the player as the main feature, before it shuts off and the level ends. Now, the reason I know like the paper and the grave are from the father is just because at the beginning the father was shown with the stripes and the boy was shown as a solid black color, and that tends to repeat itself throughout the sections where the father is still alive, so I'm just assuming that pattern continues to try to differentiate the father from the boy. Now, I'm going to address something that I would imagine most of you noticed earlier, which would be the QR code in the level. This QR code leads to a pastebin by the author, which details some of his motivations behind building the level and the thoughts that influenced it. The most vital piece of information about the story comes from this part, which is the first half of the pastebin, and it quotes as follows. "I sometimes think that thoughts are units that make up the world. Small ideas combine to form bigger ideas, and they stack up to form what we recognize as objects, just like molecules." Basically, you could say you're just living in millions, or billions of different combinations of thoughts according to this idea. Now let's bring this into a specific situation. What would happen if the units were wrongly arranged? What if the idea of a cup was actually made out of the definition of a narwhal? In this case, do you think you could still call it a cup? Probably not, since cups are nothing like narwhals. Let's just say that you're the person who has known narwhals as cups for their entire life. How would you feel when you first realized that you've been mistaken narwhals as cups all the time? It would feel devastating, just like throwing a beer can at a nicely stacked tower of cards. Ideas collapsing, the world's collapsing, you'd like to set it back in the right position. End quote. Those few paragraphs are a huge access to trying to decode the message behind this level, since it essentially gives me a good guide as to how I think I should look at this level. And so a huge shout out to the author for making this pastebin, because that really helps me out. So shout out to them. I just thought it'd be really helpful. I mean, they also revealed the reason they had just this big pastebin was because they don't want to clog up the level with a bunch of text, which makes sense, and I also kind of appreciate this way as well. It makes it harder to find, but also more cool when you do find it out. Now finally, the story begins with someone recalling their early life, their innocence that they once had, and reflecting back on it for a brief moment. Then, they go into their daily routine, looking at the world as if in a haze. It's distorted and blurry, only seeing the darker, more somber side of things. Next, as they continue into evening and eventually night, for some reason, they start to question if they're really seeing the truth around them or a mere illusion that they've created for their own safety. The next part I feel like represents them inching closer and closer to the truth that they know is inside of their head, getting closer and closer till they find it, they see the absolute, and everything just collapses. So with their eyes open, they can finally see the truth, and it comes flooding back. Their mindset is being rewritten as they change the way to look at that event, whatever it was that happened so long ago, the death of their father, and they come to term with the truth. And with that peace and acceptance in their head, they are finally able to see the world for what it really is, which is why these next few sections venture away from that more dark, hazy, kind of foggy sort of feel, and go into much more crisp, clean, defined sections. There's also another city in this one section which is not blurred in the background. It is clear, defined, all that cool stuff. And then finally, the person ventures off into the future, seeing the world that was truly prepared for them. Now, I honestly feel like that the end of this level isn't part of the actual story, but rather just telling it, like more of the author speaking to the player, trying to give clues about it, which is why I didn't really include it in the summary. However, using it can add along to the story, and along with other clues throughout the level, one can try to figure out more of a concrete way of what happened. And so it appears that at a decently young age, the boy's father died based off of the grave and maybe perhaps a childhood memory. For whatever reason, the boy never got into it. Whether it was his fault or some horrific accident is truly unknown, but it clearly somehow changes how the boy views the world, taking a more dark and cynical perspective, which causes the main theme throughout the level. However, at some point the boy finds a note, which I think might be that scrap of paper from the end, or something from his father, and starts to slowly recover, which fits in the part of the very end of the story where he does recover and truly sees the world for what it really is. Oh boy, that script was a beast to write. It took me forever to get down. It took a long time to write, and this video's, I don't know when this video is going to be out. I have to leave for vacation soon, so I'm just trying to get this audio down before I leave. This is one of my longer GD theories, and it's going to be a lot of my higher quality videos. So if you somehow watched this far, thank you so much for watching. This video took a lot of time and effort to make, which is why I said many times that it would be out soon, but I just needed to get around to recording, writing, and now editing the video. So thank you guys so much for watching. It is really appreciated. And I will see you next time. Peace.